The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, or IPCC, was established in 1988 by the United Nations Environment Programme, the UNEP, and the World Meteorological Organization, the WMO, and endorsed by the United Nations General Assembly. Membership to the IPCC is open to all countries of the WMO and United Nations, and currently the IPCC has 195 members. The IPCC provides regular assessment reports to its members and the United Nations on the latest knowledge on climate change. While it provides policy-relevant scientific information, the IPCC will not describe policy to its members. That is, it will not tell policymakers what actions to take. The IPCC also does not conduct its own scientific research. What it does is it assesses the latest knowledge on climate change based on peer-reviewed publications. These assessments require a collaborative international scientific effort where hundreds of leading scientists write the IPCC reports, and these are then endorsed by the IPCC member governments. Generally, these scientists are grouped in 3 working groups, where Working Group 1 focuses on climate science, Working Group 2 focuses on the impacts from climate change, and Working Group 3 focuses on policy responses. And then a synthesis report is drafted based on the reports of the 3 working groups, and a shorter version of the synthesis report is also prepared in the form of a summary for policymakers. As I mentioned before, these reports are endorsed by member governments, and there are different levels of endorsements which vary according to the different types of report. The summaries for policymakers are subject to detailed line-by-line discussion and approval by participating governments in consultation with the scientists that are responsible for drafting the report. The synthesis reports are adopted through a process that involves section-by-section discussion, leading to agreement among participating governments. And the full working group assessment reports are accepted by governments, which means that governments agree that the technical summary and the chapters of these reports present a comprehensive, objective, and balanced view of the subject, but they are not approved line by line, as is the summaries for policymakers. The latest IPCC assessment report is the 5th assessment report, which was released over 2013 and 2014. Remember that summary for policymakers reports must be discussed line by line and approved by all member governments? Well, the AR5 summary for policymakers states that, and I quote, "Human influence on the climate system is clear, and recent anthropogenic emissions of greenhouse gases are the highest in history. Recent climate changes have had widespread impacts on human and natural systems." So, what are the already observed changes to our climate system? These include warming of atmosphere and oceans, decrease in the volume of snow and ice, sea level rise with increase in extreme sea levels, ocean acidification, changes in hydrological systems affecting water resources, and the increase in frequency and severity of extreme weather events, such as heat waves, droughts, floods, cyclones, and wildfires. Now, let's have a closer look at the first 3. The warming of the atmosphere and oceans, reduction in the amounts of snow and ice, and sea level rise. The IPCC report concludes that the warming of the climate system is unequivocal, and since the 1950s, many of the observed changes are unprecedented over decades to millennia. This graph illustrates the change in average temperature of land and ocean surface since the 1850s. As you can see, there is a variation from year to year, some of which can be explained by phenomena such as the El Niño and the La Niña, which occur on natural intervals and can result on warmer or cooler temperatures. However, when you look at the overall average temperature, it is clear from the upward slope, particularly since the 1950s, that the Earth is warming. This second graph illustrates the average sea level rise since the 1990s. And as you can see, the sea level rise, particularly since the 1950s, coincides very much with the increase. And what is causing climate change? The IPCC concludes, and once again I quote, that it is extremely likely that human influence has been the dominant cause of the observed warming since the mid-20th century. And by the way, when the report mentions that it is extremely likely, it actually means between 95 and 100% certainty. Scientists were able to prove this with such a high level of certainty by using incredibly sophisticated equipment that drills ice sheets deep enough to allow them to measure atmospheric concentrations of greenhouse gas over the last 800,000 years. This last graph illustrates the average concentration of 3 greenhouse gases in the atmosphere since the 1800s. The green line indicates carbon dioxide concentrations, the yellow line indicates concentrations of methane, and the red line of nitrous oxide. This graph demonstrates that the increase in the concentrations of greenhouse gas emissions in the atmosphere has been the main driver of the increase in land and ocean temperatures and the rising sea levels. If we continue to release greenhouse gas emissions on a business-as-usual path, we will continue to create serious, long-lasting changes to our climate system and will be increasing the likelihood of severe, irreversible impacts for people and ecosystems. We will experience more frequent and intense extreme weather events. The oceans will continue to warm and will experience increased acidification, which is likely to decimate entire marine species. There will be a severe reduction in Arctic sea ice, with a nearly ice-free Arctic Ocean in the summer before the mid-century. This will also lead to an increased sea level rise with severe human and economic impacts, and some places will experience reduction of surface water and groundwater resources. As you can imagine, apart from the impacts to the environment, these projected changes will also have worldwide economic impacts, including food security risk, health problems, especially in developing countries, increased displacement of people, and risks to assets and the economy. Next, PhD candidate Ana Paula Rangel will be discussing the impacts of climate change in the context of agriculture.